The gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Ocasio Cortez, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I'm grateful that we're having this hearing today. Thank you, Mr. Marcus, for coming forward today to testify before our committee. So I believe we're here today because Facebook, which is a publishing platform, an advertising network, a personal telecommunications network, a surveillance corporation, a content distributor, now also wants to establish a currency and act through its wallet as, at minimum, a payment processor. Why should these activities be consolidated under one corporation?
Congresswoman, the one thing that we are focused on really is solving problems for the very people who are left behind right now, and we believe it's important because we have the ability to invest and we have the products to deliver those services that will solve problems, the same way we've reduced costs for people to communicate on our messaging apps.
I see. Libra is, according to your white paper, a unit of currency backed by a reserve governed by the Libra Association. Now, to economists, to members of Congress, to accountants, the term backed has a very specific meaning, usually incorporates monetary policy. Yet the Libra white paper does not define backed. Rather, it states that Libra will be, quote, backed by government currency and government securities. So what does backed mean in your sense?
Congresswoman, it means that it will have a reserve, one for every unit of Libra. You will have the corresponding value in stable currencies.
Mm-hmm. And so does this mean, as stated, the Libra Association does not set monetary policy, but it mints and burns coins in response to demand from authorized resellers. As it appears today, if there are more Canadian Libra users than U.S. users, will there be more Canadian dollars in the Libra Reserve to meet potential redemptions?
No, Congresswoman. The way that the reserve basket will be determined will be stable and continue to be stable, and we will work with the G7 working group to ensure that it has the proper
Thank you.
oversight.
And so this governance over the reserve is the Libra Association, correct?
Yes, it is, Congresswoman.
And so currently the Libra Association is governed by Facebook, Uber, eBay, Spotify, Visa, Thrive Capital, Union Square Ventures, and a handful of nonprofits as well as some other partners, correct?
It is correct.
Were they democratically elected?
No, Congresswoman, but we hope that we will have the proper regulatory oversight because we agree with you that this should have the proper oversight to ensure proper.
So who picked the founding members of this governance over the currency?
Congresswoman, the membership is open based on certain criteria. The first 27 other companies that have joined are the companies that have shared that desire to come and build this network and solve problems.
I see. So we are discussing a currency controlled by an undemocratically selected coalition of largely massive corporations. Do you believe currency is a public good?
Congresswoman, I believe that sovereign currencies should remain sovereign, and we do not want to challenge sovereign currencies. We just want to augment their capabilities in a way that they can be.
But do you believe currency is a public good?
Congresswoman, I believe that sovereign currencies are sovereign, and as a result, they should continue.
So do you believe Libra
sovereign
should be a
rights.
Public good?
Congresswoman, again, we will work with all of the regulators and address all concerns, and the regulators will determine.
All right. I'll take that as a no. I should take that as a no?
It is not for me to decide, Congresswoman.
Okay. I'll take that as a no. You stated yesterday in front of the Senate committee that you would be open to accepting 100% of your pay in Libra. In the history of this country, there is a term for being paid in a corporate-controlled currency. Do you know what that term is?
I do not, Congresswoman.
It's called scrip. Are you familiar with scrip?
I am not, Congresswoman.
The idea that your pay could be controlled by a corporation instead of a sovereign government, do you think that there's any risk here? You know, we've seen from scrip to the issues with how Facebook handled our elections. We're seeing a destabilizing in our public goods. By facilitating instantaneous purchases to a digital wallet, Calibra and Libra, how could, my time has expired, thank you very much.
The chair recognizes from the great state of New York, Mrs. Ocasio Cortez.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you to all our witnesses for coming to offer testimony today. I know we've had several hearings on the census, and some of you all have come and offered your expertise, and we thank you for that. I think after the past year of so many developments going on, particularly when it comes to the question on documented status on the census, there's a lot of havoc and confusion that has been unleashed in the electorate, which we know has really created a lot of fear in communities around one of the most important constitutional operations that we have to conduct. So let's clarify some things. Ms. Gupta, will the 2020 census ask people about their documented status or citizenship status?
It will not.
It will not. Is filling out the census safe?
It is safe and confidential.
And on that confidentiality, will an individual's personal information be shared from the 2020 census?
Federal law prohibits the sharing of census information with any other government agency.
So it is illegal for any of your individual information to be shared by the census, correct?
That is right.
And do we know how serious of a crime is it? Is it just kind of a misdemeanor, or is it very serious?
It is very serious. The federal law on this subject is very robust, in part because the consequences would be incredibly grave, but that would be very, very serious, a serious crime.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the potential outcome of not counting a community, right? So let's say I wanted to manipulate people's ability to return the census, or rather their willingness to return the census, kind of spook people out of it. Why would I potentially want to do something like that?
You may want to do it to encourage swaths of communities that are perceived to vote for one party or another to stay out of the census for political gain. You may want that to happen because you don't believe that certain segments of the community are deserving of the same social services as everyone else, but it is against the law and written into the Constitution that the duty of the federal government is to count every single person regardless of status.
So there is a potential political motive as to why somebody would want to undercount certain communities in the census.
Yes, I would say that the citizenship litigation and the Supreme Court found that even just the kind of impetus and motive for adding that question was motivated by partisan gain, and Dr. Thomas Hoffler's memos that were discovered in the course of that litigation unfortunately revealed that there was an effort to weaponize the census for partisan gain, when in fact it should be a core government institution and function that is free from politics.
So we have seen that there's a documented paper trail here that the desire to scare our immigrant communities out of answering the census is to help and add political gain to the Trump administration, and potentially along partisan lines, correct?
I'll say that, unfortunately, we have some pretty concrete evidence of that being the case. Again, look no further than Thomas Hoffler's memo advocating for the addition of the citizenship question to advantage non-Hispanic whites.
Okay. And so, let's see, let me move on. Mr. Vargas, I understand your organization issued a report last May from the National Latino Commission on the Census. Mr. Vargas, what did this report find about trust in the government and this administration among likely census respondents in the Latino community? Thank you. And Ms. Gupta, very quickly, let's talk about the stakes here. If we don't answer the census, would that impact our school funding for our schools?
Absolutely.
Does it impact funding for our roads?
Yes.
Does it impact resources for our communities?
Yes.
So our kids, if we don't answer the census, our kids will not be able to have textbooks, teachers on the ratios that they need, schools that are being built. We also have I represent one of the most undercounted districts in the country, but also represent one of the most overcrowded districts when it comes to schooling. That, I'm sure, is connected as well, correct?
Yes, I mean, there are broad implications for how many teachers to students there are in any school district, healthcare, hospitals, roads, infrastructure. It has very real impact on real, actual living communities when people are rendered invisible or not counted in the census.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next questioner will be Congressman Armstrong from the great state of North Dakota. Congresswoman Ocasio Cortez.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and once again, congratulations on this phenomenal hearing on such an important topic. I have to disclose that I have a stake in this fight. When I was first starting my office here, I decided to offer 12 weeks of paid family leave. And in my first 11 or 12 months in office, there have been 6 pregnancies in my congressional office, and 6 folks have taken pregnancy or medical leave. 5 of them men in my office, new fathers or folks that are taking medical leave, taking care of their families, This has been a very important dynamic. Many of the men in our office have testified how after the birth of their children or in supporting their partners, how critical it has been to be there for in each of these cases, the women in their lives. I would like to submit to the congressional record 2 testimonies from my staffers, Marcus Bettinger and Ariel Ekblad, on the impact of paid family leave in our office. But out of these testimonies, 2 important statements stood out. From my staffer, Marcus, he said, "As I write this today, I am currently home with my oldest son, while my partner visits family in Ohio with our youngest son. This might seem an inconsequential detail, but if I was not able to take this time off from work and be fully paid, my partner would not have been able to travel." And from my chief of staff, when asked about does giving dads less paid parental leave than moms contributes to the pay gap, when asked about that, she said, "My thought is this. There is this often explicit but sometimes tacit assumption that child rearing is the job of the mother, but child rearing is the job of the humans that have collectively decided to have that child. When you have an institutional setup when you have institutional setups that reify that say, oh, actually dads don't need as much time because it's not their job to child rear, it's problematic. It creates expectations for employers who presuppose if I hire a woman in a certain age range, she might leave, but if I hire a man in that same age range, he would not." Ms. Szabo, can you illuminate a little bit on the impact of paid family leave for men and on folks, the positive impacts that could have on people who give birth?
Absolutely, and the sentiments that your staffers have articulated actually came up really poignantly last week on a panel that I moderated at New America on the release of our Men in Care report, Men in Paid Leave specifically. There were 3 dads who talked about the cultural expectations that dads wouldn't take leave. They were able to negotiate, to cobble together. One of them had a wife who had a horrible labor and a baby that was in the NICU, and he was back to work in a week. Unknowing, sort of talked about how even in the childbirth classes and Lamaze and all of the other things he did, there was never a discussion from the hospital system or from his employer or from any of the other men in his life about the importance of men taking leave. So policy is a precondition. We have to design policies that have wage replacement that's high enough that men can afford to take leave. We also need a culture and sort of a discussion and men standing up to say, leave taking is important to me, and here's the way that it allowed me not just to bond with my child, but also to support my partner.
Thank you, Ms. Szabo. Ms. Gressler, you said earlier that you don't believe in a minimum wage. Is that correct? You believe the market should decide?
I don't think that we should take a job opportunity away from somebody if they're willing to work at a particular wage that the government is not allowing them to.
So no, you don't believe in a minimum wage. I take it you don't believe in health care as a right either. Is that correct?
I believe that we should help provide access to health care.
Okay. Do you believe employers should offer health care to every employee that they have?
I think that as part of a benefits package, they should determine what is the best way and what do the workers want.
Okay, so no, you don't believe it should be uniformly offered?
I think it should be what workers want and what employers
Okay, so the answer is no. And similarly, your view on parental leave is to let the market decide. And I think what we've seen here is that the market has decided. Ms. Szabo, 80% of families don't have access and workers don't have access to paid parental leave, correct?
Paid family leave. So care for a child or a seriously family member, about a half of moms don't have access to paid leave.
So the market's decided. And what is the most common length of parental or paid family leave that you have seen?
In general, it's like 6 to 8 weeks, but it really depends, and there's not a great there's not a great sample that tells us.
6 weeks. Do we know how long puppies are allowed to stay with their mothers after a dog has given birth?
I don't.
8 weeks.
Wow.
So the market has decided that women and people who give birth deserve less time with their children than a dog. And I think that at its core has shown that the market has failed to treat people with dignity and with basic respect. And so when that happens, I think it's our job as the public to redefine the rules of society and to treat people who give birth with the dignity that they deserve. Thank you very much.